The guide will make it look like an accident. She slipped on the ice, fell, froze to death. I stood frozen in my own hallway. The bag of farmer's market peaches I just bought slipping from my fingers to the rug with a soft thud that sounded like a thunderclap in the silence. Through the slightly ajar kitchen door, my daughter's voice carried with a terrifying clarity, slicing through the air of the home where I'd raised her. I had come home early from Dr. Peterson's office, bursting with the news that my heart murmur was gone, ready to surprise her with lunch. Instead, I was listening to Catherine, my beautiful blue-eyed Catherine, negotiate the price of my murder. "No, Thomas, listen to me," she hissed, the impatience in her tone familiar. The same tone she used when a waiter brought her the wrong salad dressing. "It has to be during the Aurora viewing. Remote. No witnesses. You said you knew a spot where the ice is thin. I don't want a body found until the spring thaw. Do you understand? If they find her too soon, the autopsy might be complicated." I quietly set my purse down on the entryway table, my hand trembling so violently I had to steady it against the wall. I looked at the framed photo of Catherine at her kindergarten graduation, missing her 2 front teeth, smiling that gummy, innocent smile. I looked at that photo, then at the kitchen door, and I felt my heart shatter. Not break, shatter. It was the sound of 40 years of love evaporating. The girl in the picture was dead. She had been replaced by a stranger who was currently discussing how long it would take for her mother's lungs to fill with freezing water. $2 million, Thomas, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that I had to strain to hear, leaning my ear almost against the wood. Plus the house. Marcus says the market is peaking in Boston. We can unload the brownstone within a month of the funeral. You get your $50,000 the day the insurance clears. Do we have a deal? Good. And Thomas? Make sure she doesn't suffer. Not because I care, but because panic leaves marks. I didn't gasp. I didn't scream. I didn't burst into the kitchen demanding to know how she could do this. At 68 years old, life teaches you that panic is a luxury you cannot afford when the wolves are at the door. Especially when the wolf is wearing your daughter's face. I simply stood there, a retired literature teacher in a sensible beige trench coat, and made the most important decision of my life. I decided that Eleanor Morrison wasn't going to die on an Alaskan mountainside. I decided that if my daughter wanted a tragedy, I would give her one. But it wouldn't be mine. "Excellent," Catherine said, her voice lighter now, relieved. "Mom is so excited. She thinks this trip is the greatest gift we've ever given her. She has no idea she's packing for her own funeral." I forced my lips into a smile that didn't reach my eyes. A smile that felt like it was carved out of granite. "Well, sweetheart," I thought, backing slowly toward the front door to stage my entrance again. "Let's see who survives this little game of yours. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below. My name is Eleanor, and let me tell you, you never really know someone until you hear them putting a price tag on your life." I slipped back out onto the porch, closed the heavy oak door with a decisive click, and stood there for 10 seconds, breathing in the cold Boston air. I needed to stop shaking. I needed to be the actress of a lifetime. I opened the door again, this time jingling my keys loudly and humming a tune from The Sound of Music. "Catherine? Darling, I'm home," I called out, my voice steady, cheerful, completely masking the fact that my soul was screaming. She appeared in the kitchen doorway a second later, wiping her hands on a dish towel, that beautiful open smile plastered across her face. It was a masterpiece of deception, a smile that had fooled me for years. "Mom, you're back early. I didn't hear the car. How was Dr. Peterson?" "Oh, you know him," I said, hanging up my coat and walking past the daughter who had just plotted my death with the clinical detachment of a butcher. "He worries about everything, but I'm healthy as a horse. He says I'm fit enough to climb Denali if I wanted to. My heart is stronger than it's been in years." I watched her smile falter just for a fraction of a second, a flicker of annoyance that her victim wasn't frail, wasn't weak. It was a microscopic crack in her mask, but now that I knew what to look for, it was as obvious as a neon sign. "That's wonderful, Mom. I'm so glad you're taking care of yourself." "I have to," I said, reaching out to pat her cheek. Her skin felt cold under my fingers. "I want to be around for a long, long time. To watch Sophie and Ryan grow up. To see what the future holds. I was just thinking on the drive home how lucky I am. Most women my age worry about being a burden, but you and Marcus treat me like a queen. Of course, she said, turning back to the kettle, her shoulders stiff. Tea. Please. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where she'd done her homework, where we'd eaten 1,000 family dinners, where she had cried over her first heartbreak. I've been thinking about this Alaska trip. It really is the most generous gift. You and Marcus, you've outdone yourselves. The Northern Lights. It's been on my bucket list since your father passed. We just want you to be happy, Mom, she said, pouring the boiling water. The steam rose between us like a veil. Since Dad died, well, we hate seeing you so lonely in this big old house. You deserve an adventure. A big adventure. An adventure, I echoed, wrapping my cold hands around the warm mug. Yes, I suppose I do. I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the tension in her jaw, the new lines around her eyes that spoke of stress I hadn't noticed before. I knew she and Marcus had been living beyond their means. The private schools for the kids, the luxury leases on the cars, the vacations in St. Bart's. But I had assumed it was just modern keeping up with the Joneses. I hadn't realized they were drowning. And I certainly hadn't realized that I was the life raft they intended to use to save themselves. The guide, I said casually, taking a sip of tea. Thomas Mackenzie, was it? Is he reliable? Catherine didn't miss a beat. The best in the business. Marcus checked him out thoroughly. He's been doing Northern Lights tours for 20 years. You'll be in safe hands, Mom. He specializes in older travelers. Good, I said. I'd hate for anything unexpected to happen. That night, I lay in the bed I had shared with my late husband, Robert, for 40 years and stared at the ceiling. Robert had been a criminal defense attorney. He had spent his life listening to the worst stories humanity had to tell. He used to say, Eleanor, the most dangerous people aren't the ones screaming threats in a bar. They're the ones who smile while they're calculating the odds. They're the ones who think they're smarter than everyone else. I wished he were here now. I wished I could turn to him and ask how our beautiful bright-eyed baby girl had become a monster. But Robert was gone and I was alone. Or so Catherine thought. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity that burned away the grief. Grief is a heavy blanket, but survival? Survival is a cold shower. I went to the Boston Public Library not to check out the latest bestseller, but to do the kind of research that would have made Robert proud. I spent 4 hours in the back corner, using a computer terminal that didn't require a login, studying Alaskan wilderness disappearances, hypothermia survival rates, and most importantly, the background of one Thomas Mackenzie. It didn't take long. In the digital age, desperation leaves a footprint. I found court records for unpaid loans, a lien on a truck in Fairbanks, and forums discussing a guide who was brilliant but had a serious gambling problem. Thomas Mackenzie owed $47,000 to some very unpleasant people in Las Vegas. There was a judgment against him. He was desperate. Catherine hadn't just hired a guide. She had hunted for a weakness. She had found a man who was just as desperate as she was, and was using his debt to blackmail him into murder. It was clever. It was ruthless. And it gave me exactly the opening I needed. I walked out of the library and hailed a cab to the financial district. I needed to see James Patterson. James was Robert's former law partner. A man with a mind like a steel trap and a heart that he kept carefully hidden beneath three-piece suits. He was the only person in the world I trusted. Eleanor, he said, standing up from his mahogany desk as I was ushered in. To what do I owe the pleasure? Is everything all right with the trust? You look intense. Sit down, James, I said, closing the door firmly behind me and locking it. And turn off your phone. I need you to listen to me very carefully, and I need you to suspend your disbelief until I'm finished. I told him everything. The overheard phone call. The details of the plan. The insurance money. The house. When I finished, James looked 10 years older. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose, a gesture I had seen him use 1,000 times when a case was going south. We go to the police, he said, his voice rough with suppressed rage. Immediately. We get a wire on you, we get her to confess. No, I cut in. It's her word against mine. She'll say I'm senile, that I misunderstood. She's my daughter, James. She knows exactly how to manipulate the narrative. She'll say I'm grieving paranoid. They might even put me in a home for my own safety, giving her control over my finances anyway. If I go to the police now, I lose. Then we confront her, James argued. Cancel the trip. Cut her off. And then what? I asked, leaning forward. I look over my shoulder for the rest of my life? If she doesn't get me in Alaska, she'll find another way. A fall down the stairs. A mix-up with my medication. A car accident. She's decided I'm worth more dead than alive, James. That genie doesn't go back in the bottle. She has already spent the money in her head. James stared at me, horror dawning on his face. So what are you proposing? I'm going to Alaska, I said. And I'm going to die there. James dropped his glasses. Excuse me. I'm going to fake my death, I said. I'm going to give Catherine exactly what she wants. I want to see it, James. I want to see her mourn me. I want to see her cash the check. I want to see her sell my house. I want undeniable, irrefutable proof of who she is. I want to record her celebrating my death. And when I have it, when she is drowning in the spoils of her crime, I am going to come back. Eleanor, this is insanity, James said. It's dangerous. It's illegal. If this guy, this Thomas, if he decides to just kill you anyway. He won't, I said. Because I have something Catherine doesn't. What's that? I have liquid assets, I said. Catherine is promising him money she doesn't have yet. Insurance payouts take time. Probate takes time. I can offer him cash. Immediate. Clean. A way out of his debt without blood on his hands. Everyone has a price, James. Catherine just set the bidding war. James looked at me for a long time. Then slowly a grim smile spread across his face. Robert always said you were the scary one. He said you were the velvet hammer. Robert was right, I said. Now, here is what I need you to do. The days leading up to the trip were a surreal performance. Catherine came over every day, playing the doting daughter. She helped me pack, folding my thermal underwear and thick wool socks with gentle hands. You'll need these, she said, tucking a box of hand warmers into my suitcase. It gets so cold at night. I don't want you to freeze. You're so thoughtful, I said, watching her. Most children wouldn't go to this much trouble for their aging mother. You're my mom, she said, looking up with those big deceptive eyes. I'd do anything for you. It took every ounce of my will not to vomit. I looked around my bedroom at the photos on the dresser. Sophie and Ryan, my grandchildren. They were the innocent casualties in this war. Sophie was 16, sharp and sensitive, a budding artist. Ryan was 13, all knees and elbows and sweetness. They loved me. I knew that. And I knew that what I was about to do would hurt them. Catherine, I said, keeping my voice casual. I was thinking about the kids. If anything happens to me. Mom, don't talk like that, she chided gently. Nothing is going to happen. No, we have to be practical. I want to make sure their college funds are secure. I'm thinking of moving some assets into a blind trust for them. Something untouchable until they're 25. I watched her carefully. Her hand paused over a sweater. Is that necessary? She asked, her voice tight. I mean, Marcus and I have that covered. And if anything happened, we would obviously take care of them. You don't need to tie up your money in complex trusts. Of course you would, I soothed. But Robert always believed in redundancy. I'll call James next week when I get back. We can set it up then. I saw the relief flood her face. When I get back. She knew I wasn't coming back. She thought she had just dodged a bullet. In reality, she had just confirmed that her greed outweighed her maternal instinct to protect her own children's future. She wanted access to all of it. The airport goodbye was worthy of an Academy Award. Marcus stood there, looking solemn and corporate, checking his watch, shaking my hand and telling me to have a blast. The children hugged me tight. Bring me back a piece of a glacier, Ryan joked, burying his face in my coat. I'll bring you something better, I whispered, kissing the top of his head. I promise. I'll bring you the truth. Catherine hugged me last. She held on for a long time. I smelled her perfume, Chanel No. 5, the same scent I wore. I wondered if she would keep wearing it after she killed me. I love you, Mom, she whispered. Be safe. I love you too, I said. And I meant it. I love the daughter she used to be. I loved the memory of the toddler who brought me dandelions. But the woman hugging me was a stranger, a predator in a silk blouse, and as I pulled away and walked toward security, I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I looked back, I might stay. And if I stayed, I was dead. The flight to Fairbanks was long and dark. I spent it reading a trashy novel I couldn't focus on and sipping ginger ale, trying to keep my heart rate down. I had wired $55,000 to a secure account that James had set up, ready to be transferred at a moment's notice. I had a burner phone taped to the inside of my thigh. I was as ready as I would ever be. Thomas Mackenzie met me at the baggage claim. He looked exactly like his mugshot, only colder. Weather-beaten skin, eyes that were constantly scanning the exits, a nervousness that vibrated off him like static electricity. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in a month. "Mrs. Morrison," he said, taking my bag. "Welcome to the last frontier." "Mr. Mackenzie," I said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, but his palms were sweaty. "Please call me Eleanor." We drove to the hotel in silence. The air in Fairbanks was sharp enough to cut glass. Snow piled high on the roadsides, dirty and permanent. It was a brutal, beautiful place to die. "Tomorrow night," he said as we pulled up to the hotel. "The forecast is clear. High aurora activity. We'll head out around 10. I know a spot. Very private." "That sounds perfect," I said. "But Thomas? Before you go." He paused, his hand on the door handle. "Ma'am, come to my room for breakfast tomorrow. 8 o'clock. Just you. We need to discuss the itinerary." Usually I just meet clients in the lobby," he stammered. 8 o'clock, I repeated, my voice leaving no room for argument. "I have a proposition for you. And Thomas? It's better than Catherine's." He froze. I saw the color drain from his face under the ruddy complexion. He didn't say a word, just nodded once and got back in his truck. He arrived at 8 a.m. sharp, looking like a man walking to the gallows. I had ordered a spread of eggs, bacon, and coffee. I poured him a cup and gestured to the chair opposite me. "Eat," I said. "You look like you need it." He sat eyeing me warily. "Mrs. Morrison, about tonight. I want to ensure you have the right gear." "Let's cut the crap, Thomas," I said, buttering a piece of toast with deliberate calm. "I know about the $47,000 you owe to the Venetti brothers in Vegas. I know my daughter is using that debt to force you to kill me. And I know that you are not a murderer. You're just a desperate man who made some bad bets." He froze, the coffee cup halfway to his mouth. His hand started to shake, spilling hot coffee onto his knuckles. He didn't even flinch. I don't know what you're talking about." "I'm a retired teacher, Thomas, not an idiot. I heard the phone call. I know the plan. Thin ice. Accident. Body lost until spring. Catherine gets the insurance, you get your debt paid." I took a bite of toast, chewing slowly while he hyperventilated. "Here is the reality of your situation. You can go through with it, in which case you are an accessory to murder. If you get caught, and you will because Catherine is sloppy and arrogant, you go to prison for life. Or you don't go through with it, and the people in Vegas break your legs." He put the cup down with a clatter. "Lady, you don't understand. They won't just break my legs. They'll kill me." "Or," I interrupted, sliding a heavy manila envelope across the table, "you take option 3. He looked at the envelope like it was a bomb. "What's this?" "Open it." He opened the flap. Inside was a cashier's check for $50,000. "That pays off your debt," I said, "plus $3,000 for your trouble. And I will cover all expenses for what comes next." "What? What comes next?" "I'm going to disappear," I said. "Tonight. We go out to the ice. We stage the accident. You make the call. You sound terrified. But instead of going into the water, I go into hiding. You take me to a safe place, a cabin, a lodge somewhere remote. I stay there until the insurance clears and Catherine hangs herself with her own greed." Thomas stared at the check, then at me. "Why? Why not just go to the cops?" "Because I need her to believe she won," I said, my voice hardening into diamond. "I need to see what she does when she thinks I'm gone. I need to know if there is anything left of my daughter to save, or if I need to protect my grandchildren from a monster. I need proof, Thomas. And the only way to get it is to die." He looked at the check again. I saw the calculation in his eyes, the relief, the fear, and finally a grudging respect. I have a cabin, he said quietly, about 40 miles north, off the grid, stocked for winter hunting. No one goes there until April. It has a generator and satellite internet. Perfect, I said. Do we have a deal? He looked me in the eye. You're a scary woman, Eleanor. I'm a mother, I said. It's the same thing. The night was spectacular. Green and violet ribbons danced across the sky, shimmering like ghosts. It was the kind of beauty that makes you believe in God, or at least in something bigger than yourself. We drove for 2 hours into the blackness of the wilderness. Thomas stopped the truck near a frozen riverbed. This is it, he said. The spot she picked out on the map. We got out. The cold hit me like a physical blow, stealing the breath from my lungs. It was 20 below zero. Okay, Thomas said, his voice trembling slightly. Here's the plan. There's a drop-off there. We scuff up the snow, make it look like a struggle for footing. I'll throw one of your gloves and your hat onto the thin ice near the open water. The current is strong there. It keeps a patch open. It'll look like you went under and got swept away. Let's do it, I said. We spent 10 minutes staging the scene. I stomped around the edge, creating skid marks. I took off my favorite wool hat, the one Sophie had knitted for me, and tossed it toward the black water. Watching it land on the ice felt like throwing a piece of myself away. Okay, Thomas said. Get back in the truck. Get down on the floor in the back. I'm going to make the call. I huddled in the back of the cab, wrapped in a blanket, listening as Thomas Mackenzie gave the performance of his life. Mayday, mayday. This is Northern Lights Tours Unit 4. I have a tourist down. She went through the ice. Oh God, she went under. I can't see her. Mrs. Morrison. Mrs. Morrison. His panic sounded genuine. Maybe it was. He was playing a dangerous game too. We drove to the cabin in the dark, taking back roads that weren't on any map. The cabin was small, rustic, and smelled of pine and wood smoke. It had a generator, a satellite phone, and enough canned food to last a siege. I'll be back in 3 days with supplies and news, Thomas said, refusing to meet my eye. Stay inside. Don't light a fire during the day. Smoke is a signal. I know, I said. Thomas. He paused at the door. Thank you. Don't thank me, he said grimly. I'm just doing it for the money. So is she, I said. But you're saving a life. She's taking one. The isolation was the hardest part. For 3 weeks I was a ghost in my own life. I had hired a private investigator in Boston, Sarah, a woman James recommended. Sarah was my eyes and ears. She sent me updates via encrypted emails that I downloaded on the slow satellite connection. I sat there day after day, reading the chronicle of my own erasure. Day 1. Catherine received the call at 6 a.m. She collapsed on the floor. Very convincing weeping. Marcus held her. The children are devastated. Sophie hasn't stopped crying. Ryan locked himself in his room. Reading about Sophie broke me. I paced the small cabin, wrapping my arms around myself, rocking back and forth. I'm sorry, baby, I whispered to the empty room. I'm so sorry. It will be over soon. Day 3. The search has been called off due to weather. You are officially presumed dead. Catherine has already contacted the insurance company. She asked for an expedited claim form. She told them she needs the money for funeral expenses, which is a lie. The policy is for $2 million. Day 5. Memorial service scheduled. Closed casket, obviously. Catherine was seen at a luxury car dealership this afternoon, looking at Range Rovers. She test drove a white one. A Range Rover. My body wasn't even recovered, would never be recovered, and she was car shopping. Day 10. The memorial. Sarah sent me an audio recording. I sat at the rough-hewn table, the wind howling outside, and listened to my own funeral. I heard the somber music. I heard the pastor, a man I hardly knew, talk about my gentle spirit. And then I heard Catherine. Mom was complicated, she began, her voice wavering perfectly. She had been so sad since Dad passed. She was confused sometimes. Paranoia. She told me right before the trip that she felt like she was losing her grip. I think in the end she just wanted peace. I slammed my fist onto the table. Liar. She was setting up the narrative of suicide or incompetence to smooth over any questions about the accident. She was dismantling my legacy, painting me as a senile, depressed old woman to justify her windfall. Then Marcus spoke. Eleanor was generous to a fault. But she wasn't good with money. We tried to help her, to guide her. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. I had managed the family finances for 40 years. I had grown our portfolio by 300%. Marcus couldn't balance a checkbook without an accountant holding his hand. But the dagger to the heart came at the end of the recording. I heard a small voice. Sophie. I miss her. She promised she'd come back. She promised. I turned off the recording and wept until I was empty. Then I wiped my face, made a cup of black coffee, and began to write. I wrote down every detail, every date, every interaction. I was building a case. 2 days later, Sarah sent an email that changed everything. Subject: the pearls. Catherine listed the house today. She's hiring an estate sale company to clear it out next week. But here is the kicker. I saw her at a pawn shop on Washington Street. She sold a jewelry box. I went in after she left. She sold your vintage pearl necklace. The one with the sapphire clasp. She got $800 for it. My hand flew to my throat. Those pearls. My grandmother brought them over from Ireland sewn into the hem of her skirt. Robert had given them to me on our wedding day. I had promised them to Sophie for her 21st birthday. Catherine knew what they meant. They were the family legacy. And she sold them for pocket change. It wasn't just the money. It was the erasure. Catherine wasn't just killing me. She was liquidating my existence. She was erasing the history of our family for quick cash. That's it, I said aloud. I'm done waiting. I called Thomas on the satellite phone. Come get me, I said. I'm ready to come home. The return trip was a covert operation. I wore a wig, oversized sunglasses, and clothes that Thomas had bought at a thrift store. Flannel shirt, baggy jeans. I looked like a tired trucker. We drove to Anchorage, where I boarded a flight to Boston under the name Margaret Thatcher, James's idea of a joke. I landed in Boston on a Tuesday. The city looked the same, but I felt like an alien. I went straight to James's office. You look terrible, James said, hugging me. I've been living on beans and rage for a month, James. Give me a break. Are you ready? He asked. Do we have the evidence? He nodded. Thomas gave his sworn statement to the police this morning. He handed over the recordings of Catherine's calls to him. The insurance fraud unit is already involved. They're just waiting for the signal. Where is she? She's at the yoga studio, James said, checking his watch. Inner Peace on 4th. She goes every Tuesday at 10. She prepaid for a year's membership yesterday. Let's go, I said. We took James's car. Detective Miller met us outside the studio. He was a grim-faced man who seemed delighted by the theatricality of the case. Mrs. Morrison, he said. You're supposed to be dead. I got better, I said. Is she inside? She's coming out in 5 minutes. We have officers around the back. We wanted to do this quietly, but... No, I said. Not quietly. She didn't plan to kill me quietly. She planned to erase me. I want her to see me. I sat in the back of the dark sedan watching the door. My heart was hammering against my ribs. This was it. The end of my life as I knew it and the beginning of... something else. At 11 a.m. the door opened. Catherine walked out. She looked fantastic. She was wearing expensive Lululemon leggings and holding a green juice. She looked younger, lighter. The burden of her mother was gone, and she was glowing with the freedom of $2 million. She reached into her bag, a new Chanel tote, and pulled out her phone. She smiled at a text message. Probably Marcus telling her the house offer had come through. Now, Detective Miller said into his radio. 2 uniformed officers stepped out from the coffee shop next door. Catherine didn't notice them until they were right in front of her. Catherine Blake. She looked up, annoyed. Yes. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and insurance fraud. I watched the blood drain from her face. It was instantaneous. The glow vanished, replaced by a mask of pure terror. What? That's ridiculous. My mother died in an accident. Who told you this? We have the recordings, Mrs. Blake. the officer said, handcuffing her. And we have a witness. Thomas, she spat. That lying junkie. Not Thomas, the officer said. He turned and signaled to our car. I opened the door. I stepped out onto the sidewalk. The winter sun was bright, harsh. I took off the sunglasses. Catherine froze. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. She looked like she was seeing a ghost. She slumped against the officer, her legs giving out. Mom, she whispered. It was a sound of pure horror. Not relief. Horror. I walked up to her. I stood 2 feet away from the daughter I had rocked to sleep, the daughter I had taught to read, the daughter who had sold my pearls for pocket money. Hello, Catherine, I said. My voice was calm, steady. I hear the funeral was lovely. I'm sorry I missed it. But, you fell, she stammered, tears streaming down her face. You fell. I caught myself, I said. And then I watched you. I watched you every step of the way. I watched you spend the money. I watched you lie to your children. I watched you sell my pearls. Mom, please, she sobbed, struggling against the cuffs. It was Marcus. He made me. Don't. I cut her off. Do not blame your husband for your soul. I heard the phone call, Catherine. I heard you. The officers began to lead her away. She twisted back, screaming now. Mom. Mom, don't let them take me. I'm your daughter. Mom. I stood there, unmoving, as they put her in the back of the squad car. I watched through the window as she banged on the glass, her face distorted by panic and grief for the life she had just lost. James put a hand on my shoulder. Eleanor. I'm okay, I said, though I felt like I had been hollowed out with a spoon. I need to go to the school. I need to get the children. They need to know their grandmother is alive. The next year was a blur of courtrooms and therapy sessions. The trial was a sensation. The mom who came back from the dead. I hated the headlines. I hated testifying against my own child. I hated seeing Sophie and Ryan sitting in the gallery, their young faces pale and confused. Catherine pleaded guilty to avoid a life sentence. She got 20 years. Marcus got 15. I gained full custody of the grandchildren. It wasn't the retirement I had planned. I was changing my will, yes, but also dealing with teenage mood swings, homework, and the profound jagged trauma that comes from knowing your parents are criminals. But we survived. We sold the brownstone. I couldn't live there anymore. Too many ghosts in the hallway. We moved to a house on the coast of Maine, somewhere wild and open, where the ocean battered the rocks and the air smelled of salt and pine. One evening a year later I was sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the sunset. Sophie came out and sat beside me. She was 17 now, taller, quieter, but the spark was coming back into her eyes. She was wearing the pearls. I had bought them back from the pawn shop the day after the arrest. Grandma? She asked. Yes, darling. Do you ever miss her? I looked out at the horizon. It was a question I asked myself every day. Did I miss the woman who tried to kill me? No. Did I miss the daughter I thought I had? Every single moment. I miss who she was supposed to be, I said gently. But I don't miss the lie. Sophie leaned her head on my shoulder. I'm glad you didn't die in Alaska. Me too, I said, pulling her close. Me too. I thought about that moment in the hallway, the choice to fight instead of freeze. It would have been easier to be a victim. It would have been easier to die. But mothers don't get the luxury of the easy way out. We fight. We survive. And when the people we love turn into wolves, we become the hunter. Catherine had wanted to send me into the cold dark. She didn't realize that the dark is where the stars shine brightest. She gave me a death sentence, but in the end she gave me a life. A real, honest, painful, beautiful life with the people who actually deserved it. And that, I realized as the first star appeared in the twilight sky, was the greatest gift she could have ever given me. Come on, I said to Sophie, standing up. Let's go make some tea. Ryan's probably starving. We went inside and I closed the door against the cold, locking it tight. We were safe. We were together. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I was looking ahead. And if you're listening to this, feeling like the people you love might not have your best interests at heart, listen to that little voice in your head. The one that says something is wrong. Don't ignore it. Don't be polite. Politeness gets women killed. Be rude. Be difficult. Be alive. Because the only person who is guaranteed to save you is you. Thanks for listening. If this story struck a chord, leave a comment below. Have you ever had to choose between family and your own survival? I read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe. I have a lot more stories to tell.